Hello and welcome to this multimedia series on the environment on CNC3. I'm Ira Mathur. In a bid to push for environmental awareness, legislation and enforcement, we at The Guardian Media are showcasing best practices from other countries. Last week we learned how they do it in Europe. This week we focus on the United States. We'd like to learn from their experiences. But before we start, here's a look at your feedback from Cleaning Up the Mess at guardian.co.tt. From Brent Plater, we got a couple of photographs with the following captions. Bush fires in El Tukush were very bad this year. This will make flooding even worse. The government needs to implement a fire suppression policy and make it illegal to burn during the dry season. Also from Brent, Kumana Quarry. This is a habitat for the Paui, a protected bird, but the quarry is starting to mine the road. It is blocking the road and damaging the river. And from Ricardo Gay, I was horrified to read about the gruesome discoveries at Forest Park landfills and wonder how many times this may have happened in the past. Waste management in Trinidad has been swept under the carpet and forgotten. Our landfills are left unchecked and under best practices cannot be considered landfills but dump sites holding secrets that will one day come back to haunt us. That day may be soon in coming as we have run out of space at most sites, unquote. Well, we'll have more comments from you later on in the show. Keep them coming in. For now, I want to welcome Jeff Mazur, the chief of the political economic section of the U.S. Embassy, and Trinidad-based physicist Peter Vine, who's made it clear that he is not an environmentalist, but a scientist interested in agricultural and industrial policy. Let's kick off with you, Jeff. I know that in the US, your Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, enforces over 25 laws governing areas such as clean water, clean air, chemical safety, and so on. Does this organization in the US have teeth?
Well, thank you for having me this afternoon. It's a pleasure to talk to you about these issues that are very important to all of us, both the United States and I think globally. And regarding the United States experience, the American experience as you described it, you ask a very good question because I think it's important to remember our experience may be a little different than some of the other guests you've had in this regard because, in fact, you have to remember the United States and the United States government is fairly decentralized. Yes. And so while, yes, the EPA enforces you say 25 laws, it may be more in terms of regulations and things, and sets pretty important standards that are in effect throughout the United States. A lot of the actual enforcement and a lot of the actual activities that go into environmental stewardship, environmental protection, take place at the state level and at the local level, particularly at the municipal level. And so yes, I would say the EPA has the teeth it needs to put forth the standards it sets for environmental quality, environmental goals, and protection across the United States. But again, so do the states. All of our states will have their own versions of an environmental protection agency, a natural resources department, and then localities themselves. The municipalities will be empowered and authorized to implement their own goals, their own standards, and their own rules. And that's where a lot of the enforcement actually does take place.
What accounts for some of your best practices and your success?
I would think just that, the fact that it's a big country, it's a complicated country with a lot of communities, and what we strive for always in the United States is that concept of community involvement, that power devolves essentially back down to the states and to the communities, and that individuals and people who live together in neighborhoods also get together to ensure that their environment, the world around them, is maintained and that they have a relationship with the government at all levels to see that happens. And I think then with that sort of cooperation and civic engagement by the people, best practices are shared across the entire United States, and then we bring in models from other countries and other places and try to find out what works best and implement it where we can. But it allows us, by having a fairly, again, loose, decentralized system of government in many respects, it allows us to meet national standards, but put in place best practices and have communities experiment with innovative ideas.
Okay. Peter Vine, Trinidad and Tobago's Environmental Commission and the EMA operates under legislation that governs water pollution, air pollution, and the infamous certificates of environmental clearance. Are our environmental laws satisfactory? Do they work?
Well, the environmental laws are one side of the picture and should be able to take care of the issues, but in actual fact, I'm glad to take the opportunity to highlight the nature of the people's struggle for sustainable development. And sometimes it has ended up in, for example, things getting burned, and we've sometimes had to put out flyers, and we have had a big struggle in order to get things right. As regards the...
What are some of your biggest areas of concern regarding our legislation and enforcement?
Well, first to begin, before you get to enforcement, there's the vetting of proposals. And a lot of proposals have serious engineering errors in them. And I need to respond to something that Taqway Driver said the other day. He said there's a book. Well, the fact that a book exists doesn't mean that the subject matter is correct or favorable for the country. So in fact, there are a lot of errors in this book, which is often shown as a basis for aluminium smelting.
Yes.
And another classic example, which will come out well in the electronic version, is for people to ask themselves, well, how do you really think the air pollution is going to be distributed? Is it going to be like this, which is correct, spreading out from the center, or is it going to look like this, like bicycle spokes, which is obviously an error? But the EMA passed this. So there's a straightforward mistake.
Are you saying that you're not happy with the way the EMA operates? Does the EMA not have teeth? Is it like another arm of the government?
Well, to a large extent it is. And another aspect is the delay in their procedure. First, it appears from what we've dug out under the Freedom of Information Act that no criticism will be made of any project by the EMA unless a member of the public comes forward and makes a complaint. So somebody has gotten all of the notices of violation for the past 2 years. And I have a list here. And first, a member of the public has to notify the EMA. Then, from the data, it takes a few months before the EMA issues a notice of violation. And then it takes anywhere between 3 months and a year and a half for the EMA to issue what they call a consent agreement or an administrative order to put things right. In the interim, things are going on uninterrupted. Mistakes continue uninterrupted.